if you look on the dollar bill, you see a triangle with an eye in it. The two forces of duality and the will, that brings them together into a triangle. When we bring them together into the triangle, it opens the eye. So we open the all-seeing eye, and that connects us to the matrix of everything. And people say, well, it really represents the Illuminati. But who are the Illuminati? We are the Illuminati.
Geoff, my man, it's funny how the world works and how synchronicities happen and how the universe brings two people together. It's very early here, but I would not miss this interview for anything. I found your interview with someone on YouTube. I don't even know how I found it. It's like one of those things where it was like a thumbnail, like the toughest man in the world or something like that, opens up about forgiveness. And I just happened to click on it. And then listening to your philosophy on life, I was like, I have to have this guy on the show. And I started reading your books and listening to your podcasts. And I have to tell you, man, your teachings have drastically influenced my reality. So thank you.
No, that's very kind of you to say. Thanks, Trey.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting how people find you as well. I don't consider myself a tough man, but that's it's kind of a nice neon light that people use to draw people in, because it's it's kind of an oxymoron, isn't it? The hardest man in the world, talking about forgiveness. First of all, I'm not the hardest man in the world. I'm not the hardest man in my house. And I don't have the power to forgive, but I do have the power to atone, to fix my own mistakes. I have the power to give it over if somebody has hurt me and there's a resentment and I'm still brooding. I have the power to give that over to a pardoning force, but I can't do it myself. Only contrite remorse can free somebody from their own mistakes. So I'm interested in, obviously I was a nightclub bouncer for a long time, so that's where that reputation comes from. But when I was at my most violent, where you might say I was my most physically able, I was at my weakest. I was insecure. I was frightened. I was a hair trigger. I could have a fight. I knew how to use my fists. I trained full time in the martial arts, but I wasn't strong and I wasn't tough. The strong and the tough stuff came later when I let go of the need to be physical and the belief that the world was against me and that I had to defend myself against the monsters out there. That's one thing the door taught me, working as a bouncer taught me, was that I was unconsciously creating my own monsters, forgetting I'd created them, and then developing skills and strategies to defend myself against the very monsters and the infrastructure that held monsters that I'd created and forgotten. So once I understood that, instead of trying to fix the world at the level of the screen, I came in, I followed, you imagine yourself at the cinema, I followed the little speckles of light back to the projector and recognized that the problem wasn't with the screen and the problem wasn't with the light. The screen is just a projection, a place where we project, and the light is always pure. But when it comes through the film, what we see on the screen will be determined by what is on the film. And that's our beliefs, our perceptions, our cognitions, our precepts, our concepts. So I was called to, if we wanted to change the world, to change them. And that's, in Islam, they would call that the greater jihad. In Hinduism, they would say, Krishna tells Prince Arjuna that the self is the self's only enemy. The self is the self's only friend. So lift the self, buy the self, never let the self droop down. So the enemy isn't out there. The enemy is in us. And it although it presents as an opposing force, once we understand it, we recognize it as a complementary, necessary force. We need the light and the dark, and we need to be able to bring them together with the isthmus of the self or the causal will in order to connect to God and create light or create wisdom or knowledge or the philosopher's stone. There's a lot of different names for the same thing. So I became a bouncer, and it was the greatest metaphysical experience of my life. I'm still, it was 30 years ago, I'm still unfolding the wisdom that came down from that experience. Massive wisdom that came in the form of like a concept nucleus, like a zip file with massive amounts of information that just needed to be unfolded and processed in order to get a comprehensive understanding or a certainty about it. So people thought when I was a bouncer I was a knuckle dragger, and that was just a violent thug, but I was actually there to find out who I was. Well, to find out who I was by first finding out who I wasn't, stripping away who I wasn't in order just to leave the self. And then once I understood who the self was and its potential in the world, I sacrificed the self. I sacrificed the self to the Godhead, to the source. So what they would say in Sikhism is that I am a sacrifice, and my soul is a sacrifice to anybody that is going to serve God, anybody that's going to follow the Dharma, anybody that wants to help the universe to evolve. So people use all sorts of things on the internet to draw people to the talk, but the talk is really just, or the Dharma or the discourse is just about saying, the enemy is not out there. There isn't an enemy once you understand it. There are just complementary forces that we can align, and with them we can create a vessel or a tabernacle. In Islam, they'll call it a Kaaba, a house for God. So we're able to bring down this elixir, this Christ oil, or this tinctures of wisdom, or the philosopher's stone, this divine energy, this what they would call the highest prana. So we form ourselves into a cup that can receive and conserve and process and deliver divine knowledge into the world. So the reception of it, the reception of knowledge. So if you imagine that someone like Jean-Emile Charon, the French Einstein, said that the universe evolves through knowledge and love. Knowledge is what we bring down through our experiences and process as divine elixir, and love is an event. Love is the process of moving that knowledge onto other people. But in order to be able to receive that knowledge, which is what you started with, Trey, which was very perceptive, we have to be the right vessel. If we bring clean water into a dirty hose, it will come out the other end similarly dirty. So we have to build a temple. We have to build a house or a vessel in order to receive this. And to bring a vessel, we have to be able to subjugate both positive and negative with the power of the causal will in order to create this this holy grail, this cup that holds it, and then disseminates it into the world with no agenda, with no expectation, like fruitless service. To do that, you have to really know who you are. And the door was great for me because I found out who I was by locating who I wasn't. We call this apophatic theology. We don't know what God is, and we don't know what the self is because it's invisible, but we do know what it's not. We know it's not jealousy. We know it's not violence. We know it's not anger. We know it's not greed. We know it's not the need for worldly validation or the need for worldly riches. It's not envy. It's not covetousness. It's not any of those things. So once we recognize that that's definitely not what it is, we can stop engaging those. We can stop identifying with those. We can just observe them with choiceless awareness until they convert. So the light in them, the animation light that is contained in every ignorance, the ignorance is stripped away, and the effulgence, the light or the aeon, comes across and sits in your nucleonic center, your heart. And that builds the soul up, matures the soul, so the soul is eventually able to receive and deliver more and more light without pilfering it, without polluting it, without pretending it's ours. We're just a postman, a delivery man. We receive it and we deliver it. We don't take credit for it if it's good news, and we don't take blame for it if it's a red letter. So it's all about, the work is all about preparing the vessel, and in order to receive what the alchemists would call the philosopher's stone, a tincture, like tinctures of wisdom, or they sometimes call it powder, or the red stuff, or the Christ oil. This is why it's quite confusing for people, because every different mythology and every different religion has a different name for it according to their culture and their language. But ultimately, it's just about bringing in this consciousness, or this divine energy. In astrophysics, they would call it, like creating a wider dish so that we can, or a wider aperture so that we can bring in more light and share that light with the world. We have to keep bringing it in. We have to keep conserving it. We have to keep training it. We have to deliver it. This is what Rumi said in a cryptic poem. The water wheel receives the water and turns and gives it all away, weeping. That's how it stays in the garden. So the work is all about, as you said, the preparatory work of having a vessel that can receive without polluting this divine essence. Otherwise it's going to be stolen and hijacked and pirated as soon as it comes in.
I am so interested in everything you have to say, and you've read a lot of literature. You've read a lot of religious texts and documents, and you talk about that and refer that to about those sources in your books. I'm really curious about your experiential, like subjective experiences. Like,
Yeah.
when you read all of these texts and you apply that to your life, like, how has it changed your reality? Like, how do you walk through this reality? Like, when you have this Christ oil come through you, or this energy, how do you know it's coming through you, and how do you see the results in your life? How do you see the change?
But it's interesting because all of the stuff I've read, I've been led to by the Spirit. So the Holy Spirit enters you to the level that you can handle it. And it leads me towards reading and study that helps to expand and helps to make sense of what I've experienced. So if the concept nucleus is an acorn, but it has the matrix within it of an oak tree, 500-year-old oak tree, then the reading I'm sent to and directed to, and that I discipline myself to follow, helps me to unfold and explain exactly what it is I've experienced. So reading the Bibles, reading the different texts, studying full time, has enabled me to unpack the zip file and say, oh, this is what it meant. This is what working as a bouncer meant. This is what, perfecting the self meant. This is what those experiences meant. They help me to understand and build a wider aperture so that I can take in more information and more light without imploding. Otherwise, I could be like a 100-watt bulb that's taking in 1,000 watts and exploding, because I haven't got haven't been tempered enough, I haven't got the right capacity to be able to receive it. So once you receive this Christ oil, you walk through the world very carefully. So you, for me personally, I'm in constant prayer. So my day, from when I wake up in the morning to when I go back to bed at night, is I am in constant prayer. I'm aware that this isn't for everybody, and I'm not saying everybody has to do that, but I'm saying that this is where I'm called to be. So that there isn't a point in the day where the ego can jump back in again and take over and use this Christ oil, or misuse this Christ oil in lust, in anger, in fear, in manipulation. Because the ego is like it's like pressing against the glass all the time, or the negative forces that are naturally out there are pressing against the glass all the time, and they're always trying to steal this treasure, because it is it's gold. It's, you know, tis the alchemical gold. So you walk through the world with fear, I would say. Not fear of somebody hurting me, but fear of losing my connection with God, losing my connection with this source because I've misused it. So I consider myself to be an escrow account. I receive from God in order to give to the world in a directional manner. But that I receive it in order to deliver it. And in receiving it, I am coated with it. I am sated and fed, and it comes with its own protection, with its own resources, and with its own, it brings everything I need to deliver it into the world. The adamantine particles, as they say, fall at the feet of anybody that serves God. I fall at the feet of anybody that serves God. I have no choice because I'm compelled to do it. So I walk through the world very carefully. I'm very aware of the danger of kota dharma gaku, the use of sound, the use of magic sound. I'm very aware of the use of the misuse of my divine energy. You know, I can't mentor somebody I can't mentor a girl if I'm looking at her tits. I can't mentor a businessman if I'm trying to figure out how much money he's got and what he might be able to do to me. I can't mentor somebody who's got 100 million followers if I'm thinking, I wonder whether some of their followers will come to me. I can't have any of that. For me, it's just receiving it, conserving it, training it, and delivering it in a directional manner. The spirit tells me where to deliver it, but it's not mine. It's fruitless service, as in I don't take any worldly profit from it. Everything I need is supplied. But you've got to be able to manage that while still living in the world, because we've still got mortgages, we've still got a house. You know, well, I haven't got a mortgage anymore, but people still have to make their bills. So we still have to deal with the divine energy of money, and we still have to deal with different people, but we have to deal with them in a way of non-agenda, so in a virtuous way. So I walk through the world very carefully. When I go out, I walk as though I'm on a frozen lake. I'm careful at all times that the ego can, if there is a like a light bulb is hermetically sealed. If there is a tiny fragment of crack in the glass, the oxygen is pressing against the glass at all times. The oxygen isn't running around going, let's see if we can find a crack to penetrate. It's there. It's pressing against the glass. If there's a fracture, it will rush in and it will explode the filament. And that's the same with us. If we are not hermetically sealed, if we haven't got that virtuous seal, these negative forces can come in at any time and they can burn us out. It's happened to me a few times and I've made mistakes. So I see how this energy, controls the world. I wouldn't say I control the world. Gandhi would say that when you control the senses, when you control the palate, the senses fall into alignment. And when they fall into alignment, you control the self. And when you control the self, you control the world. But at that level, when the soul and the God unite, the Atman and the Brahman are not different. God and the self are not different. So God is working through you. So he changes things through you. But the ego might want to go, I changed that and I healed that person and I created that infrastructure. But I'm very aware that the personality, Geoff Thompson, doesn't do that. But he is the delivery vessel, or one of the delivery vessels for this energy. And it does affect everything around you, everything you see is created and decreated by this spirit, and can be built up and can be brought down again by this spirit. It is an all-powerful force, and it works through you in a directional manner. It's not incandescent. It's not like going, oh, I've got this energy, I'm just going to throw the seeds everywhere, because it knows the seeds would be wasted, because they're not all going to land on fertile soil. So the directional manner of this is saying, instruct you, put 30 minutes here, put an hour there, put 6 years into this project, kick this project to the curb because it's not fruitful anymore. So this is about being in constant communion with this energy, and saying, where do you want me? How can I serve you? Even more, how can I please you? I only really want to please you. This is after Thomas Merton, who said, I don't even know if I am pleasing God. I just trust that me wanting to please him is pleasing to him. So in other words, we're trying to find the rhythm of the Tao, and we're trying to come into alignment with it so we can help the universe to expand. And if we can help the universe to expand with the increase of knowledge and love, knowledge is the acquisition of new information through experience, processed through experience, and love is the movement of that knowledge. Then the universe will fall at our feet to guide us and help us. But it is a dedicated, monkish type of reality, which I'm very grateful for. I love. But it's also, as you know yourself, because you're doing similar things, it's
hard.
Very, very challenging. Yeah, very challenging.
Well, you talk about the burn.
Yeah,
you talk about the burn, right? Like the burn is sitting in your pain bodies. Now, can you explain what the pain body is? Because like I find myself being triggered in conversations, like recently coming out of a men's retreat and having this amazing experience, a shared experience where I felt like I was really tapped into my sensitivity and just expanded my heart and just really connected with a good group of guys and like really healed a lot of trauma and healed a lot of parts of my soul and found parts of myself, and then came back into the matrix. And then it seems like after listening to your lessons, like I want what this guy has, right? Like, so I'm going to do the things that he's doing and talking about to kind of experience that a little bit more. And sitting in some of the conversations, I can feel the ego. I can just feel the old self, like the old wiring of the brain, the personality structure that I think that I am, come up in a conversation of like, even though I think I'm right, like I like the need to say that I'm right, or really, I don't know. It's like this urge to, maybe it's a lot of fear too in association with that. But there is this essence of who I am that has this awareness that is like, let's not do that. But there's a burn, and you talk about the burn with weightlifters and people in the gym and how they love the process. The burn is the process. And in spirituality, to check yourself, to check the persona, to check the ego, whenever you're trying to rewire your brain, rewire your personality into something new, a newer reality, like you have to realize when you're being triggered by something and not do the thing that you used to do, say the thing that you used to say, do all the things that the persona wants you to do, like, and that takes effort, and it does burn. Can you talk to that process, what that does to you? Is that going within? And then what exactly is the burn?
Well, it does take time, and we have to be patient with ourselves. Some of these, Krishnamurti will tell you, and my experience confirms it, that some of these pain bodies are generations old. They're thousands of years old. It's not like we're just working with a 40 or a 50-year-old pain body. It could be generations old. We could have inherited it. So it's not going to go without a fight. We've been in covenant with these negative beliefs, these old sins, these old beliefs. We've been in covenant with them for a long time. They're generations old. So they're not going to go overnight. And that, as we say, that is the war. But the war is not a war with fists and feet. The war is a war of observation. It's a war of individuation. It's about allowing these things to rise up. And if somebody triggers them, they're very much our teacher. Although we might not like to see it, the people that trigger them are our teacher, because they're showing us, they'll poke you and they'll show you where the pain body is. So the pain body might be an old wound. It might be an old sin. It might be a resentment. It might be an abuse that you've committed, or an abuse that's been committed on you. It might be a false perception. Your whole reality might be based on a specific pain body, and all of the smaller pain bodies come from that. Gurdjieff would call this a chief feature. So we have one main pain body that sits at the filter of our observing eye, catches the light and projects into the world as it wants to project. So I have this tremendous belief that nobody could be trusted. The world couldn't be trusted. People would abuse me. People would take advantage of me. Even the people I love, especially the people I love. So that was a chief feature. That was a false perception. And all of the other little things, that I did in the world and all the things I did wrong and believe came from that. So the key was to recognize what my chief feature was, or what my dominant belief was. And it's often refracted, it's often referred, it's often hidden away 2 or 3 or 4 different places away from what it actually presents at. So we have to go in and trace it right back to the roots. Lao Tzu says that we have to recognize the children and trace the children back to the mother. When we find the mother, we found the cure. So in other words, the manifestations of it, we're triggered, or we get angry, or we feel lustful, or we feel envious, or we throw our slipper at the telly because we don't like the politician that's on. That's a trigger. But if we don't engage that, but just see it, and then just follow it back and trace it back, it will come back to a core belief. My core belief was that I couldn't trust anybody, not even God, although I was very afraid to say I was angry at my mum, or I was abused when I was a kid, and I felt I was angry at her because I felt she blamed me. I was angry at my dad because my dad didn't do anything about it. I was angry at the police because they were useless. I was angry at all of these different people, but it was only when I did a deep rigor, deep listening, when I went in and I wrote a stage play about it. Spare me one sec. I haven't got a copy of it here, but I wrote a stage play called Fragile that allowed me to bring all of that resentment to the surface and see it on a stage, acted with actors. I watched it every night for 3 weeks, every night, and I was burning every night. And everything that rose up, I was angry at my mum, I was angry at my dad, I was angry at the person that abused me, I was angry at the police, I was angry at society, I was angry at the government. There was no one I didn't project my anger onto. But ultimately, I was really just angry at God, because I was saying, where the fuck were you? Forgive my language. This is what I said. Where were you? And he says, you think I abandoned you? And I said, yeah, I do. This was after a long time writing it to try and he encouraged me to bring it out, say it. And he said, I didn't abandon you, but did you abandon you? And I realized I did. I abandoned myself every day and every night after that abuse. I abandoned myself physically. I self-abused. I sexually self-abused. I was violent in the world. I was this parasite that was in me, that was acting through me, was committing every form of sin. If I'd have been around at the time of Moses, there would have been a 13th commandment with my name on it. That's how bad I was. So it encouraged me to look at all of the stuff, and all of this stuff, Trey, was blackmailing me. If people knew you did this, if people you knew you did that when you're on your own at night, if people knew what you thought, if people knew what your imagination was doing, if people knew who you were, they would hate you. They would find you disgusting. They would think you were a deviant. You would be cancelled. You would be sacked. Your wife would think you're a deviant and get rid of you. Your children would be ashamed of you. These were all the things that it blackmailed me with. So I had to have the courage to go, part of me wants to be free from this parasite, and part of me is the parasite, wants to hold on to it. So I had to have the will force to bring those together and sit down and write the play and go and sit and watch people take the play in and see whether this blackmail was true. And all of it was a lie. By writing the truth down and bringing it to light, it became a light itself. So people that watched it a lot of them were crying, a lot of them were very emotional because it was such a hard truth. People hugging me and embracing me. After I'd finished the play, all of the anger that I had for my mum and my dad disappeared. I mean, it literally dissipated. Recognition and liberation were instantaneous. That's a line from the Tibetan Book of the Dead. In recognition and liberation were instantaneous, but I had to absorb 99% of that fear and that threat before it dissipated. So the 3-dimensional monster became a 2-dimensional cartoon, and then after I absorbed 99% of it, sat in the theatre, watched the play, pop, and it just disappeared. And all of the effulgence, all of the light that was hidden in that came to me and sat in my center. When I went to see my mum, I felt overwhelming love. When I went to see my dad, I felt overwhelming love. When I spoke to God, I spoke to God with overwhelming love. Even the person that abused me, I felt overwhelming compassion for him, because I knew he was also trapped by a parasite. He was also taken over by a parasite. So the pain body could be any of those things, and all of those things. But ideally, what we look at is we go, this thought that rises up. How do I know if it's good or bad? How do I know if it's right or wrong? Is it, you just say to yourself, is it kind? Is it coming from a place of kindness? Can I qualify it as a kindness? Can I qualify it as a love? If somebody writes about what I think and say and do in the newspaper tomorrow, would that be okay? So we have to go into this massive place of discernment. So we have a sword of discernment, and this is one of the icons of Buddhism. He has a sword of discernment, and he has a rope. A sword of discernment cuts through the bullshit, and the rope ties down anything that's negative and pins it and holds on to it so it can't control anything. So this is about having the courage and going in. It's not about going into the world and seeing what everybody else is doing wrong. That's just a projection. That's trying to fix the film at the level of the screen. What we do is we look at the light hitting the screen, and we follow the light particles back to the projector. And we go, well, it's not the light. The light isn't evil. The light isn't violent. The light isn't a horror film. It's just light with particles of perception coming through it. So we go back and we look at the film and we go, wow, no wonder there's a horror film on the screen. The film is a shitstorm. So you go in and you start working on the film. That's the exciting thing, Trey, because we don't have to wait for anybody else. We don't have to get anybody else's permission. We haven't got to wait for the present flavor of candidate to fix things for us, or for the present government to fix us, or for our wife to fix us. We come in and we fix ourselves. We don't even do that ourselves. But the moment we start to work, the spirit comes in and goes, this is Geoff, or this is Trey. He's woke up. He wants to work. He wants his kingdom back. This is where he is. This is the level he can work at. This is his potential. This is his dharma. This is what we can do first. It has a whole blueprint of you. And if you are willing to work, it will work with you. And it will, although we will experience all of this stuff as it comes up in individuation into conscious knowing, and that is where the burn is. Once we understand the process of it, and this is a massive flip of perception, but once we understand the process of it, we learn to recognize, and we can start to enjoy that process, because we go, yeah, this is the burn. This is just all the negative stuff being burned away. And it's not being wasted, because even negative thoughts, negative perceptions, hatred, all of those ideas, ideologies, thoughts, they all contain atoms. They all contain an aeon of light. All of them are contain light, even though they're encased in like a conquer of negativity. They all contain light. So when we start to convert them, the shell cracks off and flies away, and the light that it contains jumps to the first stable nucleus it can find, which is ourself. And that means our soul just expands and matures. And then we're able to do more work and more work. And this spirit goes, oh, Geoff's really maturing. Trey's really doing the work. We'll bring him a little bit more. So it's working constantly on, like a pin in a crab shell coming inside us, showing us that needs to be worked. That we need to repent that. We need penance for that. We need to atone that. So, and that sounds quite judgmental, but it really, repent just means we need to return. We need to repair that. We need to find refuge from that. We need to return to love, and love is the center. Love is where God is, and love is the movement of God's energy. So it will show us what these things are. If we ask, if we say, I want to work, but I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know where I'm going. I don't even know if I've got the right, I just want to serve God. I want to please God. And then these incorporeal intermediary beings between us and God will come, and they'll start to guide us in miraculous ways. And the burn is the actual going. So for instance, you go, I'm going to watch a bit of sexual pornography. and you feel that inclination because you've done it for a long time. So you look at it and you think, I'm going to do that. But the spirit has shown you, the knowledge or the wisdom that you've got has shown you that that's allowing vampires across the door. That's allowing parasites into your body across the threshold, and they take over your causal will and they gobble up all of that divine essence. So you go, well, I'm not going to let them in anymore. So I'm going to resist not watching sexual pornography. I'm going to resist it. I'm not going to watch sexual pornography, or I'm not going to overeat, or I'm not going to be indolent. The burn is that part, is that period where you are, where your resistance is fighting against something that's risen many times before in order to be fed. So you're saying, I'm not feeding you anymore. This is a bear that I am not going to feed. And when you don't feed the bear feeds you, because the energy is dissipated and the light comes over to you. But you may have to do that several times before you get it right. You know, you may have to have several falls before you get rid of the addiction, or before you get rid of the bad behavior. You might find yourself triggered, and you might find yourself in the very middle of a trigger, getting angry and going, I'm really sorry. This is me. This is not you. Thank you for showing me this. You've shown me something that I need to work on. I need to work on this. So all this is about becoming a unitotal being, so that the inside and the outside are equally beautiful, so that the thinking, the saying, the doing are all in congruence, all in alignment. Until we're able to build that triangle, if you look on the dollar bill, you see a triangle with an eye in it, don't you? Mm-hmm. That represents the two forces of duality and the will that brings them together into a triangle. When we bring them in together into the triangle, it opens the eye and then brings in effulgence or knowledge. So that's the all-seeing eye. And people say, well, it really represents the Illuminati. But who are the Illuminati? We are the Illuminati. If we're able to create this triad, if we're able to crystallize ourselves by bringing those two forces together with a third force, we create the fourth force of the Philosopher's Stone, or the tinctures of wisdom. So we open the all-seeing eye, and that connects us to the matrix of everything. But in order to do that, like I said to you before, that needs to be brought together, and it needs to be stable. You know, it needs to be a stable force. It needs to be formed as stable, so that we can bring this energy in, we can receive it, we can conserve it, we can train it, we can deliver it in a directional manner without polluting it or without stealing from it. So we have to really be living very correct moral and ethical lives. Otherwise, we're going to bring it in, and it's going to be stolen. It's going to be stolen at the point of reception, or at some point in the process. You know, I've lost count of the amount of people who have brought the energy in, and they're going to do something great with it, and then they've changed their mind and kept hold of it and done something with themselves, and then it just becomes pestilence. This energy needs to keep moving.
How do you know you're bringing that energy in?
Say again?
How do you know you're bringing that energy in?
Because you start experiencing miracles. You start saying things you didn't know. You start bringing things forward that like people will go, God, where did that come from? That's amazing. Or you'll see miracles in your life. So if you imagine the three levels of this prana, or of this energy, the first level comes through our food. That's the lower level. So we get prana and we get this light energy through our food. So we have to perfect our food, and we have to eat the right foods. The second higher level comes through our breath, through pranayama. So that's a higher level, but the highest level can only come when we become unitotal. And when we become unitotal, you'll just know, because healings will happen around you. Miracles will happen around you. The Holy Spirit will speak through you. He'll advocate, he'll counsel, and things will just be miraculously provided for you. And you'll be able to communicate with that as well. You'll be able to create your triangle, open the eye, and you can say, for instance, when I was talking to people about the metaphysical power of forgiveness, because it's a process of converting negative energy or trapped energy into light. And I wasn't able to convince people of what I'd experienced. I couldn't articulate it. So I created a triangle. I went into the Akashic, or into the ionosphere, where all of these different lights and intelligences are stored, everything. And I said, I want to write a book about forgiveness that I can share with people. I want to write it specifically to share with people because I'm unable to convince them of the power, the metaphysical power of forgiveness. I can't really articulate why it is so powerful. And the next day, these chapters fell into my head like coins falling through water. And I wrote it all down. And I ended up with this book that brought a completely new view, a completely different view that was out there, but it was broken up into disparate places. It was all over the place in different religions. But the information it came down, and I wrote it down, but it also came with instruction. I had to listen to 110 hours of Judaic lecture on repentance. You know, it took me into Buddhism, it took me into Judaism, it took me into Sikhism, it took me into all of these different places. It took me into sociology, it took me into physiology, it took me into neurology, it took me into all these places, and I had to go and study those things in order to get it down. Then when I got the book finished and I've got something new, this is new information. This is information that I've been brought by the Holy Spirit, and I've put it onto the page. But now that needs to be, in order for that to become love, it needs to be moved. So I've promised that I'll receive this and I'll deliver it. But when it comes time to deliver it, my ego clicks in and I feel fear. And I think, oh God, you know, this is a difficult subject and it's quite controversial. And a lot of people are already upset about it. And I'm only just started talking about it. And I started to feel myself wanting to step away from it. I don't really need to do the interviews. I'll just put the book out there. It will do its own thing. But I've made an agreement. So one day I just sat down and I got in touch with all of the big podcasts that I've been on, you know, like London Real and James English and some really good podcasts, Sky News, and all the people I've been in touch with before and spoke to before. And I said, I've got this new book. I want to come and talk about it. And they all had me on. And I did about 60 different interviews all around the world with doctors, with psychologists, with psychics, with mediums, with spiritual leaders, spiritual teachers, spiritual seekers. I did interviews with basically anybody that asked me. So that was, you know, the receiving of the knowledge and the deliverance of the knowledge was helping the universe to expand in knowledge and love. So knowledge is the reception of new information taken from experience, my own experiences. And then love was the movement of that knowledge. So love is an event. So when we do the work, so when you went on your retreat to help perfect yourself, that is the movement of knowledge. That is love. And you know it's love because it's, you know, it's fulfilling, but it's also very difficult because you suddenly have to look at things that terrify you, things that blackmail you, semi-autonomous thought forms, as Eckhart Tolle would call them, or parasites that are fighting for their life. They do not want to come out of Trey. They do not want to come out of Geoff because Trey and Geoff are a buffet. They're a party. You know, they're a fairground ride. I can come into this person's consciousness and I can engage him. And he doesn't even know it's not him. And by the time I've engaged him, I don't even know I'm not him. He thinks I'm him and I think I'm him. And I go out and act in the world and I create mayhem. And then I retreat back in again and I leave Geoff the personality to pick up the bill. So when we recognize that we are thinking or saying or doing the wrong things and that they create in the manifest world and they create according to their like, we stop engaging them. When we stop engaging them, that's when we feel the burn. And when the burn rises up, don't forget it's semi-autonomous thought forms. Maybe there's a legion of them. Maybe there's just not one or two. And when they rise up, they will fight like mad to try and engage you, to try and confuse you, to try and bring dissonance in. And we have to be able to sit in the center and hold and observe without identification, observe without engagement, observe with choiceless awareness. We just observe. That takes to be able to sit in that energy that we've associated with fear or lust or judgment or rage, to sit in it and not act on it is the mark of a master. That's what the door taught me. on the door, I've got everybody coming to the door, challenging my authority. And I have to hold my authority, otherwise they'll take over my authority. And if they take over my authority, I'm no longer running the door. I'm no longer protecting the club. I'm not protecting the club or the patrons or the staff, and I'm not protecting the license of the club. In fact, if I don't hold my authority, someone will take that authority off me, come into the club and take over. That's a great metaphor for the heart, for the causal will. If I don't control my mind, or if I am not the authority in my own body, any kind of passing energy will come in and have a party in me, and then leave me to pick up the bill. You know, like the old saying of the reputable Dr. Jekyll is always picking up the bill for the disreputable Mr. Hyde. So the work is to recognize this stuff as it rises and do nothing, as in don't engage it, don't identify with it, just sit. But that takes a tremendous courage. It takes tremendous knowledge, and it takes fortitude. And it's a tempering process. So we have to have the ability to sit in that. But if we understand weight training, like we said, in the weight training, we go, well, the burn is where the growth is. So we've got to get into the burn quickly. We've got to find the burn quickly, get into the burn quickly, stay in the burn long. We even develop exercises to get ourselves into the burn quicker, to make the burn increase, because that's where the growth is. So spiritually, it's not different, but this is why it's really important to use the will to control the physical body, to control the breath body, so we can get the prana from those lower energies, but also control the mind and the intellect. We need to expand the mind and the intellect to be able to understand this, not just to understand it, but be able to hold it and be able to walk through the world, knowing that most people are asleep, knowing that most people don't understand, they don't even understand the laws of the reality that they're in. So they're constantly tripping up over the laws because they don't understand them. They don't understand that they have an access to an infinite kingdom. They don't understand that they are the creator and the destroyer of their own illnesses and their own diseases. And they don't understand that there's nobody out there to blame. It's just coming back inside and finding this immovable mind. They don't understand that. And you have to walk through, even with people you love. I had to watch my sister and my brother die from alcoholism, even though I knew what I knew, because they wouldn't give me consent to help them. All I could do when I prayed on it, and I said, I can't help these people because they're not giving me consent. They're not asking me for help. And if there's no consent, you can't help. And God said to me, you can help. Just turn up with love. Just turn up with love. That's what I did. I turned up with love, and I communicated with otherworldly beings, with my brother, and I said, please ease his pain. Please help him to get through this. Please see him through it. With my sister, every time I went and sat with her, and towards the end I was sat with her in hospital every single day, all I did was just make her laugh. Never spoke to her about alcohol, never spoke to her about what she'd done wrong or what she'd done right. Never judged her, ever, because I love her. I just took love. And I used to, even when she was dying, even when she was 5 stone and she was a bag of bones and she was yellow with death, I could still get her laughing because she knew I had no judgment. I just loved her. So my knowledge was that all I can do here is bring love. And the movement of that love was in me turning up and sitting with her. So we can't help people if there's no consent. So if someone's watching this, they've obviously given us consent to talk. And if they've given us consent, then the spirit I'm talking with and the spirit you're talking with will land in them, and they may feel inspired. And if they feel inspired, it means the spirit's entered them. And then the spirit will start to work at its own pace. It will lead them to where they need to study, who they need to speak to, where they need to work. And if they're triggered, same thing. If something I say triggers them, then that's good as well. I've shown them where they can be triggered. I'm showing them where I can press a button and completely take over their autonomy. If someone can be triggered, it means that the triggering person has stolen your autonomy. I remember someone saying to me once, He said, I live by the sea and people throw litter on the beach. This was many years ago. People throw litter on the beach. He said, it drives me mad. I'm so angry. And I said, so all I need to do to steal your autonomy is throw a bit of litter on the beach and I own you. I said, I could get you into a fight. I could get you to risk everything for a bit of litter on the beach. He said, oh, I never thought about that. And another guy said to me, when I drive down the middle lane, when people drive down the middle lane in the motorway in England, to drive down the middle lane, if you're not overtaking, it's anathema. People get very angry about it. He said, I get enraged, and I keep getting into road rage situations. I said, so all I've got to do then is hold the middle lane and I own you. I take your autonomy. I just trigger you. I'll just hold that middle lane until I own your autonomy. And then I can do something with that autonomy if I want to. I can give you the finger. I can shake my fist at you. I can say, pull over. I could get us into a fight. I could change your reality. I could put you in prison. Just because I'm holding middle lane, just because I'm dropping litter. Oh, I never thought about that. Then a week later, I'm in a cafe, an outside cafe, and it's the summer. And this girl walks in and she's wearing nothing but a tan. And my eyes drop on her hourglass and I can't take them off. And this voice says to me, all I have to do is show you an hourglass and I own you. And I thought, yes, what a great lesson. So I started to practice it. Just in sharing the truth with others, the truth was revealed to me. I'm telling people things I've never even thought of before. And I'm telling them because they've given me consent. But when they give me the consent to tell them the truth, Trey, I'm hearing the truth myself, about myself. So, okay, I can work on that. I can practice that. If I can't control that part of me, as Jesus would say, if your left eye offends you, rip it out. In other words, if there's part of me I haven't got authority over, then I haven't got authority. So I need to be the authority in my body, the authority. I need to be what Jean-Emile Charon would call the distinguished aeon, the leading light, the sentinel ego. So I'm the one that says where we go and what we do. And I win all of those territories back until there is a unified body. Once there's a unified body, I can, if I'm blessed, I can connect to the bodies of unified bodies. In other words, I can connect to the Indra's web, the matrix. And from that point, if I want to, I can create that stillness and that center, and I can communicate and I can say, I want to bring this book forward. I want to do this talk for this reason to help these people. I want to, if it's pleasing to God, can you give me the information? The information just comes mostly instantly. If my request is genuine, and I can call that down for whatever I need. We did a film recently, an 8-minute animation. That's doing really well. And I think we needed £25,000 to make it in the end. And it just fell out of the sky because it was righteous. The money wasn't for me. The money was to make the film. And the film has got a beautiful message. The message of the film is that evil can be overcome with good. Evil is a privation. It's something that's wholeness. If we have wholeness, we can make evil whole by adding some of our own light to it. So when I called down the money for that, I pressed a few buttons, contacted a few patrons, boom, the money came instantly. Instantly. It fell out of the sky. Let me tell you this other thing. I was abused in a boys' club in Coventry. When I wrote the film about it and put it out there into the world, it was very difficult. It was very painful. It was a tremendous burn bringing that up from the depths and making it into a film and putting it out there in the world. I used to drive over the ring road in Coventry every day or every other day. And every time I drive over the ring road, I could see this boys' club from the ring road, and it haunted me. The day we finished the film, we were screening it in London, I came back to Coventry and I drove over the ring road and the boys' club wasn't there. It had been razed to the ground. It had been knocked down. So by removing the cause from me, I removed the effect in the world, even the infrastructure. The infrastructure was gone. So we don't just affect what's in us, we affect what's out there, because what's out there is determined by what's in us. It's a difficult thing to get your head around, but when we change ourselves, we change the world. but it has to be real. It has to be, we have to go in, we have to get all of those tiny last bits of residue out, and we have to, because they all contain light. All of them contain light. Every thought we have, every belief we have, all of it, if it's a dark hatred, it's still animated by something. And our job is to find that in ourselves, and through this process we talked about of individuation, recover that light. So in Judaism, they say that's the only reason we're here, to convert darkness into light. But when you think about it, Trey, it's atomic. If you look at the nucleus of an atom, it's surrounded by orbiting electrons. Those electrons are considered to be negatively charged particles. So they're the evil, if you like. And the nucleus is a stable center, a combination of positive and neutral particles. If those negative elements come anywhere near the nucleus, they get sucked in. They call it frame dragging. The negative shell of the electron is ripped off and disappeared, and the light jumps to the nearest stable nucleus, which is the nucleus of the atom. So when we're reading Christ, or when we're reading alchemy, or when we're reading the Guru Granth, the Sikh Bible, or whatever one we're reading, they're basically just talking physics. Like 5,000 years ago in the Vedas, excuse me, the Upanishads, they're talking physics. It's all esoteric and it's all cryptic. But if we do the study and we do the rigor, we find the same thing over and over again. Become unified. And when you become unified, you unify with everything. And when you unify with everything, you have access to everything to the degree that you can hold your unity. So it's spiritual, it's physical, it's physiological, it's religious, it's alchemical, it's physics, it's all of those things. So I've been called to go to all of these different places to see the same lesson, a bit like I did as a martial artist. As a martial artist, I studied pretty much every system you could imagine, and I trained with some of the best people in the world. Everything from the long range kicking right down to the close range scratch, catch as catch can, I trained with amazing people, and I found the same truths in all of them. All of them have the same truths. And when I found that truth, it was so powerful that it spread across the world. The stuff I was doing went across the world because the truth in it was right in front of you, but it was obvious. So it's the same with the spiritual stuff. There is a common truth in all of the different things, and our job is to find them. And you're like me, you've probably been around a few corners. You've had a lot of experiences, so you have a lot to convert, a lot of experiences that you can break down and convert. Like that boys' club was the atomic particle, the bricks and mortar and wood and windows of that club was broken down, and around the corner they rebuilt a new one. So the particles that build up our mistakes or our wrong perceptions can be broken down into their atomic particles, their component parts, and rebuilt as something new.
It's so beautiful. I have 1,000 questions to ask you. I'm very curious. How do you hear God?
If it's complicated for people, just remember, just keep returning to love, keep returning to kindness. Either be nice or be neutral. Be kind. And if it's not kind and what rises in you isn't kind, just practice not engaging it. I mean, Eckhart Tolle's work, The Power of Now, he's probably the leading guy in the world at the moment who sits on this technique. He's perfected it. He's a brilliant teacher. He's the kind of mystic of our age, really. So people want a really simple way of looking at this, because I'm called to look at it from every angle in order to, from all of these angles and extremists in order to bring it down to a simple truth. And he's sitting on the simple truth that he's coming from the inside out. I'm coming from the outside in, but we're end up in the same place. So just working from a place of kindness. That's it. Be kind.
How do you hear God? How do you develop that relationship? How do you, like, because you talk about beings between here and the heavens and the
Yeah.
universe, and it may be just like, familiar lexicon. It could be the quantum field. It could be anything, right? But
Yeah.
I'm really interested in like hearing like your experiences. Like, when you started doing this work, did you start having mystical experiences? I know we don't want to put an emphasis on our experiences because then people will try to have it, but I'm just so fascinated by your story and the change after reading your first book and listening to the stories to reading The Divine CEO. There is a huge drastic change in that. So like, when you started doing this work, like what were your experiences, out of body experiences? Like you talk about, hearing, going into the Akashic field. Like how were you able to, I guess, cultivate these abilities to do this or access this information? Like did spiritual teachers like actually come to you, and like what did that look like?
Well, the moment you start to do the work, you are noticed. As Al Ghazali would say, you are noticed. If we're doing the wrong things, we're noticed as well. We're noticed by, by negative people and by negative beings and by negative circumstances. But when we start to do the right thing, we are noticed. I'll give you an example. I was going through a dark night of the soul. I was in Edinburgh and I was really suffering, and I didn't fully understand. I understood I was going through a cleansing, but didn't fully understand it. And I picked up a pamphlet on the Gita, on the Bhagavad Gita. And it got a blue guy on the front, which was Krishna, but that didn't really attract me. But I read the back and it said about self-sovereignty, and that lit something in me. So I took this pamphlet and I read it. And this was just being given out by one of the Krishna followers in Edinburgh. And I read this pamphlet and it really intrigued me. So I thought, where's it come from? And it came from the Bhagavad Gita. So I thought, well, I'll pick up the Bhagavad Gita. And I read the Gita. And when I finished reading the Gita, I felt like I'd really achieved something, because it was a difficult book to read. It's an esoteric book. It's written the same as all of the Bibles, in similes and metaphors and parables. But when I finished the Gita, I realized the Gita was just a chapter out of the Mahabharata, which is an Indian epic. So I thought, well, I'll read the Mahabharata. And I took it on holiday with me and I read full time for 2 weeks. And my eyes were nearly bleeding by the end, because it was a difficult read again, but exciting. I didn't really understand much of it. So the Mahabharata, the one I read, was, was just a condensed version of a larger, I think something like 5 volumes of the Mahabharata. And I realized that the Mahabharata was just part of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 15 very large volumes. So I thought, oh, well, so I ordered them. My kids bought them for me for Christmas. But the moment I ordered the Bhagavatam, I ordered them through a Hindu friend of mine, his guru, his teacher, said, who's this for? And he told him, and he said, has he read the Gita? He said, yeah. Has he read the Mahabharata? I'm paraphrasing, but I got the Bhagavatam and I read full time, I think for about 4 or 5 months, full time hours. And I finished it. And the moment I finished it, I had a call from a friend, said, my guru wants to meet you. So I was noticed. Because really nobody reads all of the Gita or all of the Mahabharata. Certainly if they don't read all of the Bhagavatam, even the avid followers, unless it's their whole life. The people don't read it. The same as they don't read the Bible. How many people do you know that have read the whole Bible or the whole Quran? So I was noticed, and he brought me into his life, and he told me 3 things about me, like he read my mind, and told me 3 things I needed to, one thing I needed to do, and 2 things I needed to avoid. And I left that room, and I took the lessons immediately. So the one thing was, don't eat meat. But I'd been a vegetarian and come away from it, but I knew innately that I needed to go down that path. I needed to get a higher level of prana from my food, and I wasn't getting it through meat. I needed to go to a more vegetarian balanced diet, so I hadn't got to go through animal flesh in order to get to the nutrients that come from the plants. He told me to stop looking for siddhas, because I was a bit fascinated by siddhas and miracles. And he said, when you look for siddhas, that means your ego's connected. So stop looking for them. They'll come on their own. You'll experience them, but don't look for them. And avoid the occult. And I'd started to look at the occult a little bit. Just I was curious, but again, it wasn't me that was curious, it's my ego that was curious. I was looking for miracles. Like St. Francis says, when he went into the cave to pray, he said, I really wasn't looking to pray, I was looking for secrets, I was looking for miracles. And instead he met with a harridan, with a screaming woman who told him to, you know, if he didn't be careful, he would go insane like her. So immediately I stopped looking at occult. Immediately I rang my wife and said, I'm not having any more meat. And immediately I stopped looking for siddhas. But they were happening to me anyway, all the time. So you get noticed. Teachers present themselves. Books present themselves. When I'm in the height of it, when I'm really connected, books just land on my doorstep. People send them to me randomly. I just find myself with a book that I didn't know I had. When I went through another very difficult cleansing, probably the most difficult, somebody had given me a copy of the Zohar, which is 23 massive volumes, and I couldn't even open the box. They sent it to me as a gift for something I'd done, and I'd done a lot of cleansing, and this just came as a gift. So it was like an introduction of wisdom into my life that I wasn't ready to look at. I didn't look at it for 3 years. But these books arrived. They didn't even open the box. They didn't even open the box. I didn't want to look at it. I was frightened to look at it. 3 years came, and I went through I had an encounter. I had a Christ encounter, which drew out an old fear and some old stuff, and I felt terror. It was like a kundalini, but it was a kundalini that came through me and picked up every residue that I hadn't yet cleaned. And it took all of my control, all of my power to hold the center. And it threw me into prayer. It threw me into meditation. I started getting up at 4 because I couldn't sleep. I started studying, and I started talking to the gurus. I was talking to Sri, to the
Sri Yukteswar.
Yeah, I was talking to lots of different people, but particularly Milarepa. I was talking to the Ramana Maharshi, and I was talking to Aurobindo. Those 3 particularly. I was looking at their pictures every day, and I was talking to them. But specifically to Ramana Maharshi, because I felt peace just by looking at him. And this voice said to me, it wasn't even a voice, it was just a knowing that I needed to sit down and read the Zohar. And the Zohar, where I'd emptied all of this negativity out of me in about 3 or 4 solid projects, it was going to come into my body as esoteric knowledge, like drops of elixir. It was going to fall into my body like antibodies, and it was going to go and clean out the residue. But it was also going to infuse knowledge within me. So I spent probably, I don't know, between 4 and 6 months again reading full time, and I didn't understand any of it. And at the very beginning of the Zohar, it says, you won't understand this. Don't try and understand it. It's esoteric. Read the English, read the Arabic, scan the Arabic, but your soul will read it like a barcode. Your soul will understand it. And then when I was writing, I had the intuition to take notes, and then later take notes on the notes. So I read these 23 books over a period of time, and where I'd emptied, I was refilled again. And then I started to disseminate that knowledge out into my work, out into my own writings, out into the teaching. But it was all coming back to the same thing, really. All coming back to the same thing. Unify yourself, and you become unified with God. When you're unified with God, God acts in you and through you as God. So the Holy Spirit, which is like if you imagine electricity in the air, comes through different stations until it's able to come through our plug hole, doesn't it? It's shrunk and shrunk and shrunk until the voltage is small enough to come through our electric razor or our computer. So God comes through these different levels of being and comes into me, and then I just pass it out into the world. So it's basically just that. We're just creating a ladder to God, or a bridge to connect heaven and earth, like the yin and yang sign. You've got the dark and you've got the light, haven't you? Everybody looks at the dark and the light, but nobody looks at the line between them. That's the bridge. That's the ladder. That's the isthmus. That's the filament, the soul, the self. And again, if that sounds complicated, I want to stop my addiction. I don't want to stop my addiction. So light and dark. When I place my will force between the two as a connecting bridge, there's no longer dark and light. And I act, and I don't do, so I act and I resist not taking the drugs or not overeating or whatever it is. That's when I create light. So it's the important thing is the part in the middle that brings the three forces together. So they say one brings two, two brings three, and three creates a fourth. So the one is God, the two is the duality. So the one is the singularity, the two is duality. The three is when we bring the will to bring the three together. And then there's no longer a dark and light and a neutral. There is just light. So if you look at a light bulb, positive terminal, negative terminal, and a filament that brings the two together. So there's no longer positive and negative. There's just light. This is what Rumi says. He says, there is a field beyond right action and wrong action. I'll meet you there. So the field of light beyond right and wrong means there's no right and wrong. There's just a field of light. So this is about going, I want to eat healthy. I haven't got the discipline to eat healthy, but you use your will and your intelligence to sit between those two forces and you make yourself eat healthy. When you eat healthy, you get, your body is obviously illuminated. You get more light, you get more knowledge. So it's all about illumination and about illuminata. People are looking out there, but you know, in potential, we are the Illuminati. We can all connect to that. That's all of our heritage. And the work is recognizing the forces that try to stop you from doing that. You know, the forces in you. This is what Geoff said. It's about self-observation. But what are we observing? We're observing that it all happens in us. Everything we experience, whether we're watching it on the telly or at the cinema or reading the paper or having a conversation, where does it happen? In us. It happens in us. So if it happens in us, then we can change it in us by finding this immovable center. We can only find an immovable center if we're able to create a nucleus. And when we create a nucleus, that is an alchemical force that will turn anything that comes close to it into light, into more knowledge, into more information. Then the key is to pass it on to other people. And then when we pass it on, Jean-Emile Chiron would say that the neg entropy increases. In other words, the order of it, you know, the organization and the order of it increases, and it expands. And because he says the universe, or is this Pierre Teilhard says the universe is looking for its own omega point. It's looking for completeness. And if we help it to find completeness by finding completeness in ourselves, by finding unity in ourselves, the universe will assist us. It will assist us to whatever degree we do the work. And this reality we see here will be changed in an instant. And what we need will be brought in an instant if we're aligned. I've had visions of this. I've had beings, I've been taken out of my body and taught this by a teacher. I've had beings appear to me, not all of them nice. And most of my teachers, you know, come in the form of ancient esoteric books. I'm not talking about reading the revealed Bible. I'm reading, you know, like the binary Bible, you know, right and wrong and all that. I'm on about reading the quantum Bible, the quantum Quran, the quantum Bhagavatam, the quantum Srimad Bhagavatam. And when you go into those books, or the quantum Zohar, when you go into those books, boom, this is Geoff. This is Trey. This is where he is. This is what he's here to do. This is his Dharma. This is how far he's gone. This is what we need to work on first. So you get this divine sat-nav that just starts to direct every single thing you do, from what you eat, to what you think, to what you say, to what you do, to what you study. And then our job is to have the discipline to still get up early, to still do the study, even if the ego goes, I don't understand this. When I read the Zohar, there wasn't a single session of a single day where my ego wasn't screaming for me to stop. Screaming for me to stop. I could hear it. This is bullshit. This is rubbish. We don't even fucking understand this. Forgive my language. This is what it was saying. We don't even understand this. This makes no sense. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your life. When I get a response like that, when I get opposition like that, I know I'm on the right track, because it's not a kind voice. It's a frightened voice. So I hold the center and I let it come close. And when it comes close, it just gets dragged into the nucleus, and it becomes a part of the nucleus. The light is taken from it, becomes part of the nucleus. But every single day when I sat down, I had to have the discipline to sit and go through that work, looking at 23. Can you see it on there?
Yeah.
I had to go through every one of those, and every part of me resisting it. And it was an interesting thing. I was told when to read, how to take notes, and when to stop. If I went 15 minutes past when I was meant to stop, because my ego's like, I want to just get this over with, I'll do more. I felt massively unstable. I felt like I was going to go insane, because the information coming in was so rich, I just couldn't take it. I had to go and really settle myself. And then the next day I go, okay, I'm just going to do exactly what I'm told. Not 5 minutes less or not 5 minutes more. So the instruction that I got was impeccable. So it came from all sorts of places, sometimes visions, sometimes just as a knowing, sometimes as a voice speaking to me through a book, sometimes as, through somebody that I was mentoring. Sometimes the beams in my house spoke to me. One day I was wondering, I got some negativity getting in, and I thought, what's happening? And I asked, and I looked up and I saw one of my beams. I'm in an old reformed barn, and I saw a wasp creeping out of a tiny hole in the beam, and I realized that there'd been a few coming in every single day, and the hole was so small you couldn't hardly see it. It was saying, if you haven't got a hermetic seal, if you're not impeccable in your life, this negativity will get through, and you'll hate it because it will feel like hell, but it's really your teacher. It's showing you that there's a leak. The rain that lands on your roof is not an enemy because it finds a leak and wets your ceiling. It's an instructor. So everything was speaking to me. Everything in the universe was sentient. Everything was alive. I could communicate with a heron at the local park. And it taught me the heron, when I sat and watched the heron and watched it fish, it was so still. I thought it was made of plastic. And everyone was going, yeah, it's made of plastic. Everyone was just walking past. I sat and watched it. And I said, what can you teach me? And it said, I'm going to teach you how to be invisible. These fish are going to swim around me. I'm going to be so still they won't even see me. And then he said, the moment they come close, boom, goes in, takes the fish. I watched him take 5 fish. And then later on, I saw the heron again. And he said, do you want to know more? I said, I'd like to know more. He said, I'm a nucleus. He said, I don't steal the fish and I don't fish. He said, I keep myself so still that I'm embedded in God, and these fish surrender themselves to me. They sacrifice themselves to me. They are so drawn to my stillness that they sacrifice to me. They sacrifice themselves to me. So a heron in a park was teaching me about particle physics. So everything will speak to
you. Geoff, I could talk to you or listen to you all day long, but our time has come to a close here, and I really enjoy this conversation. I enjoy your work.
Thank you.
I enjoy just sharing space with you and learning more about myself, and learning where, the pain bodies, how the pain bodies are teaching me about myself. And your work has really opened me up to how I can open myself up more to receive. So that's been the biggest lesson for me. How can people find you? How can they buy all of your books? Do you have a website that you can point them to?
The only place I'm online is at my Instagram page, which is run by my friend Gabriella. It's and it's Geoff _Thompson _official. And the books they can get on Amazon. And if I just leave you with one thing from Islam, which I really loved, it's the word sabra, and it means impact. And Muhammad said that there will be nothing in your life that will be better for you than impact. Remember that the impact, the burn, when you have those impacts in your life, there is nothing better, because that is the process of converting dark into light. So when Muhammad spoke to Allah and said, because he was struggling, and he said, show me things as they are. And he said, be patient. I've got the quote here somewhere. Can't remember it, but it basically just said, be patient while we decide. You are in our sight. I love that. I love that idea that we are in his sight. He's watching us. He knows. And these impacts are there for us to grow, for us to develop. Whatever comes up, we have to kind of think of it like we've invited it, and then work with it. Think of it like being in the gym. This is going to help me. This is going to be good. So nothing will ever happen in your life that's more important than sabra. If you're getting these sabras, these impacts, these hits, it's because the universe is teaching you, and it's teaching you because it wants to help you to evolve. It wants to help you to evolve because it wants to evolve itself.
Geoff, man, thank you so much. This has been an amazing experience.
Thank you, Trey.